Chapter 4. Miles to Go, 115. I woke up to the sound of music. I spit a clot of dried blood out of my mouth and listened. It was angels singing. I couldn't understand the words, but it was beautiful. A warm wind, like breath, blew over my face. I did it, I thought. I died. I licked at my split lip. It's about time. There was nothing but the angels singing and the warm wind and lots of pain. My lips hurt, my teeth hurt, my head hurt, my back hurt, my ribs hurt. Crap, I said. My tongue was thick and dry in my mouth. I'm not dead. Bo jumped up beside me and panted, "Good morning," in my face. He whined and licked his lips and wagged his tail so hard his butt shook. He nudged at me with his nose. "Yeah, buddy," I croaked. My throat was hoarse and scratchy. "Give me a sec." I blinked and tried to prop an elbow beneath me. Jagged slivers of pain shot up from my ribs to my skull. I managed to sit up and look around. I was sitting on the dirty asphalt of an alley, tucked into a corner between a brick wall and a green dumpster. The dumpster was beat up and dented, and its smell woke my nose up quick. Somehow I'd managed to crawl behind it. In a sour, foggy flash, the whole nightmare came back to me. Being followed, the fear, the anger, the rat-faced kid, the beating, the money. I fumbled quickly through my pockets and found it. One $20 bill. That was it. My hands formed into fists. My breath came so hard and fast. "It's not enough," I said out loud, my voice hard and sharp, like broken glass. I shook my head. Sickness rose in my belly. My hands went soft. My breaths slowed as I concentrated on not throwing up. I was too sick and too tired to fight back the tears that seeped up into my eyes. "It's not enough," I said again. My voice was small and fragile, like broken glass. Bo whined again. His whine opened my ears, and I heard the angels still singing. Along with the singing voices came another, better smell. I pushed through the reek of the dumpster. Frying onions, cooking beans, grilling tortillas. The smells were spicy and warm, and they poked at my stomach with delicious fingers. It smelled like Jess's kitchen when her grandma was visiting from Mexico. I got on my hands and knees and peeked around the corner of the dumpster. There was a door propped open across the alley. The singing and smells were coming from inside. I squinted at the handwritten sign hung on the door. "San Cristobal's Restaurante. Please use front door." Beside me, Bo whined and licked his lips. We both were smelling that food, and I'm sure both our bellies were saying the same thing. I got to my feet and gasped as the pain in my head roared louder, like someone had turned the volume knob as far as it would go. I squinted and gritted my teeth. Bo was pressed into my leg, his tail thumping against me. "Stay," I said. His ears dropped, but he didn't follow as I limped over toward the door. Inside was a narrow hallway crowded with boxes. At its end was the kitchen, noisy and clattering with the sounds of cooking. I could see the backs of 3 women, stirring and chopping and moving pans around on a couple of giant stoves. They were the ones singing. They were the angels. A little radio was up on a shelf blaring out some song in Spanish, but their voices drowned it out as they sang along. The song sounded like it was about heartbreak, or hope, or maybe a little bit of both. Their voices rose and fell and rang with emotion as they worked. Their singing and all those sad Spanish words and the sweet, spicy smells of the food at their hands all mixed together into something that stuck me right there where I was standing. I leaned my head against the door jamb and just breathed and listened and smelled. It was something wonderful. It kind of hurt my broken face to smile, but I did, a little. And I raised my camera and took a picture of those angels cooking that food that smelled like heaven. But then, of course, the pain in my head and my bones and my face reminded me where I was, and who, and why I was there. I swallowed and blinked and tried to clear the wonderful out of my brain. There were 2 doors in the hall, one on either side. Through the one on the right, I saw a mirror and a sink and the edge of a toilet. I could feel the dried blood caked on my face. I needed to clean up, and that bathroom would be as good as anywhere else I'd find. I looked back at Bo. He was sitting with my duffel bag by the dumpster, looking at me with his mismatched eyes. He'd lain tight against me all the long night. He'd chased away the wolves and stood guard over me through all the darkness. I blew my breath out and took a look around. Then I patted my leg and whisper shouted, "Come on, Bo!" He sprang over to my side before I could even smile. "But be quiet," I added as I squeezed through the open door. The sound of the angels got louder. Their backs were to us, but I knew they would turn at any moment. I hurried to the bathroom and ducked inside, Bo walking tight by my leg with his tail wagging. I caught a glimpse through the door of the other room across the hallway. It was an office or something, with the computer and a phone and a messy, paper-covered desk. Then I closed the bathroom door and slid the little locking bolt shut. Bo was loving the kitchen smells. He looked up at me, obviously disappointed when the bolt snapped into place. "Sorry, buddy," I said. "We're not here to eat. We're just gonna—" My voice stuck in my throat when I saw myself in the mirror. My face was scratched up. One eye was surrounded by a puffy black bruise. Another bruise showed darkly on the opposite cheekbone. My lips were caked and cracked and bloody. Between them, I could see that one of my top front teeth was chipped. A trail of dried blood trickled out of my nose. I looked like garbage. That's the truth. I felt things start to crumble inside me. I bit at the crumbling with my back teeth. "No," I said to the bloody wreck in the mirror. "You don't cry. You don't cry." And I didn't. But as I wiped at my face with wet paper towels, my hands shook, even though I told them not to, and my breaths tripped on their way in and out of my lungs. But my eyes didn't cry. The voices of the angels blew in through a vent above my head and echoed in the room around me. I took my hat off to wipe at the dirt and blood high on my forehead. I didn't put it back on. I let it drop to the floor and stay there. I ran my hands over the fine stubble on my mostly bald head. The baldness I was always trying to hide. The baldness that told the world, "This kid's got cancer." It shouted it. I hated that baldness. The crumpled postcard was still in the inside pocket of my jacket. The kid hadn't thought to search there when he was looking through my pockets. I pulled it out with shaky fingers. It showed a mountain, huge and snow-covered against blue sky. Printed in curly purple along the bottom were the words, "Mount Rainier." I swallowed. That wild mountain, the very top of it, was what I was traveling toward. I'd always known it was crazy. A sick kid running away to climb one of the biggest mountains in North America. Alone. Yeah, it had always seemed crazy. But there in that bathroom, bloody and bruised, it didn't just seem crazy. It seemed stupid and impossible. Hopeless. I blinked at my burning eyes and stuffed the postcard back in my pocket. I got all the blood off my face, even the new blood that came when I wiped the dry blood away. I wiped until my face was clean and the sink was dotted with little droplets of red and the garbage can was almost full of paper towels. I looked better, but not that much. And all the while, I thought about the money that wasn't in my pocket and the food that wasn't in my belly, and the hurt that was all over me, and the mountain I was supposed to climb. I didn't cry, but I may as well have. I looked at myself in the mirror, standing there not crying, with my hat on the ground. I looked small and weak. I looked alone. I hated myself. The camera hung waiting around my neck. I held it low in front of my chest and took a picture of my ugly reflection in the mirror. I didn't smile. My skin looked even paler than usual under the flickering fluorescent lights. "Come on, Bo," I said. "It's time to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. I picked my hat up and slipped it back on my head. Bo's claws skittered on the tiled floor as he turned with me toward the door. I knew what I had to do. I blew out a tired breath and opened the door and almost ran right into a singing lady walking toward the alley with a garbage bag in her hand. She was tall, with her hair pulled up in a hairnet. We both stopped. Her voice cut off in mid-song. Her eyes and mouth got big. She started shouting something in Spanish. It didn't sound mean or angry or scared, just alarmed. She shouted it again, even louder. The other angels stopped their singing. Then they were there in the crowded little hallway with us. Their surprised eyes took me in, up and down, and then Bo. I could have run. I should have run, probably. But I was frozen. By my hunger and my hurting, by my loneliness, by the sound their voices had made while they were singing, by the friendly, round shapes of their faces, even when they were surprised by a crazy kid and a dog in their kitchen, by their warm brown eyes that reminded me of Jess. They whispered to each other in words I couldn't understand. Then the tall one reached forward, slow and easy, and touched the bruise on my cheek. I didn't pull away. Another one stretched out her hand and touched the cut over my eye. They talked back and forth to each other, their voices rising. They nodded their heads and said kind words into my eyes, words I didn't know. It felt good. Good to be touched, good to be cared for. Then I heard one of them say a word I did know. Policia. The word threw cold water on the warmth I'd been slipping into. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No police." My brain struggled for the few words of Spanish I'd picked up. Por favor. That meant please, I was sure. Por favor, no policía. Their faces wrinkled in confusion, and they did more urgent whispering back and forth to one another. I saw the office behind them, across the hall. I pointed at it, then held up my hand to my ear like a phone. "Telephone," I said. "Telefono?" I licked my cracked lips. I need to call my parents. Mama. I said it with the Spanish accent at the end, like Jess did. Mama y papa. Telefono, por favor. The worried lines in their faces softened. There was a little more whispering, then they stepped to the side. The tall woman who'd first found me put her arm around my shoulders and guided me toward the office. "Sí," she said. "Sí." She smelled like flowers and warm food. I slipped into the little office, Bo coming with me but looking up at them and grinning as he passed, tail slapping back and forth. He's always friendly with people in kitchens. I closed the door on their watching faces, blocking out their curiosity and the smells of the kitchen. My mouth was watering and my stomach grumbled angrily, but I turned toward the phone on the messy desk. I fumbled in my pocket for the napkin with the phone number on it, the one from the TV screen in the diner. I picked up the phone. The dial tone hummed in my ear. In my other ear, I could still hear the radio playing. The angels were silent, waiting. I bit at my lip and tasted blood. With a trembling finger, I started to dial the numbers. I thought of how sick I felt, how hurt. I thought of the fists and the feet the night before. I thought of all the money that was gone. I thought of how small and weak I'd looked in the mirror, and I thought of how far I still had to go. My headache was a growling grizzly with sharp claws. "Washington State Law Enforcement Tip Hotline," a voice blared in my ear. It fought with the aching for space in my head. "Yeah," I said. My voice barely made it out of my mouth, so I cleared my throat and tried again. "Yeah, that missing kid? The one from Wenatchee?" The next words waited to be said. They waited with the angels' still silent voices. "Yes," the man said into my ear. "Yes? Do you have any information about the missing child?" "Yes," I said, and I opened my mouth. But then Bo barked. Bo almost never barks. He almost never barks, unless he's mad. That's the truth. His bark was loud in the little office. I blinked and looked down at him. His ears were pointing up at me, but his tail wasn't wagging. He twisted his head side to side and then looked at me, and he whined just once. I looked into his green eye and then his brown one. My head cleared. Here's what I don't get. Why giving up always sounds good until you do it. Yeah, I was sick and hurt. So what? That was nothing new. Yeah, most of my money was gone, but I still had some. Okay, some wolves had torn me up the night before, but then angels woke me up. Sure, I was all alone, but I had Bo with me, and one Bo was worth more than a whole world full of alone. I looked up at the clock on the wall. I still had time. "Excuse me, do you have any information about the missing child?" "Yeah," I answered, dropping the napkin into the garbage can. "He's in Moses Lake. I saw him. I'm sure of it." I hung up the phone. Bo still stood, looking up at me. "Thanks, buddy," I said. He wagged his tail and flopped his tongue out of his mouth with a wide smile. The angels were waiting in the hall when I opened the door. The tall one reached out and pressed something into my hand. It was a warm paper towel, all bundled up. I peeked inside and saw a fresh tortilla, stuffed with rice and beans and onion and red salsa and green cilantro and grilled chicken. The smell that wafted up to me almost made my knees buckle. Tears burned up into my eyes, probably from all the spice in the air. I blinked them away like I had in the bathroom. "Gracias," I said to the woman. And once was not anywhere near enough, so I said it again, holding the warmth of their food in my hand. "Gracias." They smiled and nodded. "I have to go," I said, pointing with my chin toward the back door. "My mama, she's coming. I have to go." Even when you're talking to someone who might not know what you're saying, lying to good people just feels bad. But it had to be done, so I did it. They said some words, most of which I didn't know, and rubbed my shoulders and bent down to pet Bo. One of them offered him a couple of warm tortillas, which he scarfed down in a few snapping bites. In the alley outside, I tightened the backpack straps over my shoulder and picked up the empty duffel bag. I held the taco in one hand and knew I'd have to eat it at a jog. I looked down at Bo. "Come on, Bo, we've got a bus to catch." I took a deep breath, then smiled. And a mountain to climb.